Hello, my lovely listeners. I'm Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns. Welcome to this episode of Real Health and Weight Loss. Good morning, lovely listeners. It's Dr. Lucy this week. No Dr. Mary, because I have a wonderful guest that I think you will love to hear her story. Her name is Jodie. She's one of our members, and her story will resonate, I think, with lots of you. And the reason that I've asked Jodie to come on is really to help unpack some of the difficulties perhaps that she had at the start that she had to overcome. Welcome to the podcast, Jodie.
Thanks, Dr. Lucy. It's so good to be here. Very nervous, but excited nervous.
Good. I like the way that you reframed that. Nervous rather than anxious, excited. It's wonderful.
Thanks.
So, Jodes, you joined our membership back, I think it was in January at the start of the year.
Yeah, I think it was the 11th of January. I have been keeping track of how many weeks I've been on. So, yeah, beginning of January.
So tell us what was going on for you before you joined. What was the state of your health and what was happening?
I think just before Christmas, I'd found out that I was heading down the track towards pre-diabetic and being diabetic, which was just horrible. I had moved into my new place in October, which had 2 flights of stairs, and the first flight of stairs was 21 stairs. The second flight was 15 stairs, and I couldn't make it up the first flight of stairs without having to rest and then go up the second flight of stairs. My body ached all the time. I had horrendous back pain, and then I'd started developing knee pain from the stairs. So not great.
No. So it was really impacting your actual day-to-day life.
Yes, all the time. And I would make just excuses like, okay, I'm going to go and take the bin out, but I'm going to do a lot of things downstairs before I go back upstairs. So I only have to go down the stairs once for the day. And same when I would come home from work, I would go, okay, I'm only going to go upstairs once and then I'm going to stay upstairs. And that's just crazy.
Well, I think part of it is self-preservation, isn't it? If it's painful, we always try and move away from unpleasant experiences towards pleasant ones. So if it's painful, I can understand why your brain was going, minimize the stairs. But interestingly, we can often reframe that to an opportunity in other ways.
Yeah, I don't know at the beginning when I moved in that there was any sort of mental capacity to be able to do that. It's different now. I don't see it as a challenge anymore. But at the start, those stairs were the challenge.
Yep. Yeah. And there's no option. You have to go up them or you can't get in your house.
I can't drive my car unless I go down the stairs. I can't get into my house unless I go up the stairs. It's, so just making things like at the end of each workday and making sure I was going to the shop then instead of going after I got home and then going back out again, just so I wouldn't have to walk those stairs.
Wow. Gosh. So that was in the lead up sort of to Christmas. Well, as you said, October, so November, December. And then something's obviously happened where you've said, you know what, enough's enough, the line in the sand. Tell us a bit about that.
Do you know what it was? It was so funny. I'd been seeing Ali, my osteo, for quite some time. And she had been on the program and she kept saying to me, you really should do this, you really should do this. And every time I'd be like, no, because she would say keto. And keto to me is like a swear word. And it is just, so I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And this one day she was so persistent. And I actually came home and I looked at the website and I was like, I have to do something. And I have to try something because I can't keep living like this. I can't continually be in pain all the time. And I can't just live my life like this. There was no life, really, because I would come home and I would do nothing and I would just stay at home because I was too afraid of those bloody stairs. But she was so persistent, and I thank her like all the time, because it was just the best thing she could have ever done, was being persistent. And the same day I looked it up, I booked my consultation with you.
Yes, I remember it. And interestingly, it was funny because I was actually away at somebody, because it was in the middle of January, I think, and it was back in the time before, in between lockdowns and all of those sorts of things, and we were away. But I was able to, hook up the computer at these people's house and have our chat.
It was so good. I think I took so much away from our first conversation that I was excited and nervous, but excited, like I always am. I always just get that whole feeling of, okay, it's going to be really good, but I'm so afraid of it. And I think what made me so excited to start on this was when we had that initial conversation, I left and I went, you know what? She never asked how much I weighed. Do you know that's never happened? Never, when I've ever been on to anything, through a doctor, through anything else, has anyone ever not asked me how much I weighed? And that was huge.
Yeah. Do you know, and it is, I think, it's part of diet culture. It's part of, this idea that your health is tied exactly to that number on the scales, and it's completely untrue. And the scales, as you hear us say all the time, are a really rudimentary tool. They're like a blunt instrument, yet all of us at times have placed way more emphasis on that number than ever before. And I think even for me in this sort of weight loss space, I have changed the way I manage people, and people come into the clinic and sometimes they're going, are you going to weigh me? And I go, oh, well, if you want to be weighed, yes, I can do that. But it's not actually that, the number is not that important. It's the doing.
I still find scales valuable for myself, but they're a tool. They're not the whole toolkit.
Correct. Oh, I love that, Jodes. I love that.
So for me, there's something that I tap into and I do use, because I do have a large amount of weight to lose. So I really want to track that, but there's other ways to track it as well. So how my clothes fit, how I feel is probably the number one thing, is how I feel.
Yes, absolutely. And so how do you feel now?
Amazing.
I love that.
I think I'm so much happier than what I ever was. And I was probably very depressed. I'd had some horrendous lead up to a massive weight gain in the breakdown of my marriage, which we'd been together for over 20 years. And so that is about 4 years ago now. And in the 3 years afterwards, I just ate. There was nothing else, just eating.
It's common, isn't it, when we're distressed, that we will use food to soothe. And it's one of those things where, like, occasionally that's normal, but it's when that tool no longer serves you well that it becomes a problem.
Yeah. And it was just such a hard period of life that I just didn't know how to see forward from that. And I was just stuck, really just stuck. And I couldn't see how I was going to get out of it. And I think the first step out of that was selling the family home, buying my own home, moving into that, and then getting those bloody stairs.
Which, look, may well have been that blessing in disguise, because if you didn't have that challenge every day to have to deal with, you may have been able to sort of continue that, oh, well, it's not too bad story that we often
Well,
have.
it's funny because that was never on my list of things I wanted in a house. It was definitely on the do not want stairs.
Yep. And here you are with a house with 2 flights.
Yeah. And it's fine. I just live with it now. It's just part of life, and I don't mind going up and down the stairs quite a few times. But the funny story was when we moved into the house, it was a very long day. The poor removalists, they were exhausted, and I think I'd walked up and down the stairs 100 times in the first day. And that night, I think I cried for 3 hours. I was so sore. I was so tired. I was so overwhelmed. And all I kept thinking was, have I made the worst mistake of my life? What have I done? And I'd said to my daughter, I think I've made a mistake. I think I've made the worst mistake of my life moving into this house. And she turned around and she said, yeah, you have, Mum. And that's the type of honesty we have in our family. You know, she was thinking the same thing as I was thinking. But you know what? The next morning after I'd slept and got up, I thought, you know what? This is where I'm meant to be. It's okay. The stairs are not going to be a problem forever.
Correct. And now they're not.
No.
It's interesting, isn't it, how our brain offers us those stories sometimes, particularly if we've made a big commitment, that maybe we've made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I think before we started, you were telling me about a story in your mind. After you joined the program, your brain offered you that thing that maybe this is a mistake.
Oh, yeah. The story about how I roped my friend into helping me quit. So I was afraid, and I'd heard the word keto so many times, and it was just not like resonating with me. And keto, like I said, is a swear word. And I was on the phone to my friend this one night and I was talking. I said, I don't think I can do this. It's, you know, I've read too much about keto and what I don't like about it. And she said, well, okay, draft an email and let me read it and we'll send it off tomorrow. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, okay, no problem. And I hung up the phone. And I sat and I just went, no, this is me self-sabotaging. And I wrote her a message back and I said, I've roped you into self-sabotaging with me. And after that, it was like, okay, I can do this. It's not that bad. And keto doesn't have to be part of it. It's low carb.
Absolutely. And I think this is the interesting thing, that words like keto mean different things to different people. And for a lot of people, the word keto means lots of bacon and butter and no nutrients.
I think it's all the artificial too, because a lot of keto you see from America and they do use a lot of substitutes for different products. And I think that's not okay. Like, I don't want to eat substitute. Even now, I don't have artificial sweetener. I don't like it. I have actually a reaction to it. So it's something that stays out of my diet, and that's good.
Yeah. And I guess even for us, the emphasis, and maybe this is what's happened over 12 months, is that we, focus on low carb real food. So we've invented our own little hashtag of LCRF because that's actually the foundation. And I mean, a lot of people do kind of embrace the word keto. I'm eating keto. I went to the restaurant and I asked for keto. It becomes a word, but it's not really, sometimes it's not that helpful.
I think that too, there's a stigma around it. So people look at you differently when you say, I'm doing keto. Or they'll say to you, aren't you on that keto thing? And I say, well, no, I'm actually on low carb real food rather than keto, because I feel like, okay, I'm just that weirdo that does keto. No, I just eat better. I eat real food and it's not full of processed junk and it's better for me. So
yes, absolutely. And there was another episode, I think, that you have talked to me about too, where your brain was giving you an option to stop or to give up, or that this is hard. And in behavioural science, we will often call this resistance. And resistance to change often comes out of fear. Are you able to perhaps share with our listeners what happened to you?
There was a morning tea at work at the beginning of the year, and it was a surprise. It was a thank you for the work that myself and my colleagues had done to start up the school year and get everything on track and ready to go. And it was a surprise, like I said, and we were summoned to the hall to go down, and we were standing outside waiting because we had to wait. And I was like, what's going on? And nobody actually knew, the three of us, and we really didn't know. And they're like, well, maybe it's a morning tea. And I was like, my whole body started to shake. I was like, a morning tea? I'm not prepared for this. Like, I'm such a preparer. I'm not prepared for this. So what am I going to do? And I think we were standing outside for what seemed like an eternity because I was going into full-blown panic. I couldn't talk. I was shaking, and I was like, okay. And we were asked to go in, and it was a massive morning tea. And I was shaking still. It didn't stop. And all I could see was cakes and donuts and cookies. And I looked for something that I could eat. And I couldn't see anything alive on that table at all. Nothing was alive, or nothing had once been alive and now was sitting in a dish with some dip or something that I could sort of have a pick at. And we were thanked, and, you know, everybody went up and they got their plates and they're like, well, you're not eating. And I'm like, oh, I don't eat it. I don't eat it. And I had a friend come up who said to me, I know you're not eating this food anymore, so I bought you this, and handed me a protein bar, which was the loveliest, most wonderful thing that could happen in that time. And I said to her, I don't eat those.
Yes.
And then I felt immensely bad that I said I didn't eat it. And I had a few people come up to me and say, well, why aren't you eating? And I said, well, because I don't eat that, or I can't eat that, or whatever came out of my mouth at the time. And I just, in the end, I stopped and I said, I can't be here. I cannot be around this. I can't be here. So I I walked really fastly back to my office and went out into the storeroom and shut the door and just hid in there. And while I was hiding in there, I was like, what do I do? And you know what I did? I turned to my group, the macadamia nuts. And I presented the problem. I'm here. And do you know, the support that you get back from those girls is absolutely amazing. And what I needed at the time was to speak to somebody who understood what I was going through and know what I was feeling.
Absolutely.
It was just a weird day.
Yeah. And for those of you who are not sure what Jodie is talking about, all of our members we have little support groups, and they're called, well, low carb things like the macadamia nuts, and we've got the bacon bits and the smashed avos, etc., cheesy bites and things. So that's like the first point of call, because suddenly you've got 8 or 9 women who are there ready for you. Not everyone's just sitting around waiting for messages, obviously, but it's a good chance then that somebody will be available to talk to you and basically help you through a difficult situation, which, interestingly, if you were to have that experience now, like you're now 10 months into your membership, how would it be for you now?
Oh, it's fine now. Like, I think even a couple of months in, when people were having cake for morning tea and things like that, it was fine. But I was prepared. I think that for me, being prepared is probably the best thing I can be. So knowing that I've got food to eat that's prepared every day, knowing that I've got my menu planned every week, and knowing that I don't have to eat that because I don't eat it anymore.
Yeah. I love that. It does make it, it makes it so much easier when you've got a boundary, and that boundary is not about can't, and it's not about being deprived. You're not looking at things like donuts going, oh, I wish I could eat that, but I can't. Your brain has just changed to, I don't eat that.
Yeah. I have actually planned eating something that isn't on low carb real food. And actually, when I've eaten it, it's been, okay, well, we have these beautiful place here where I live that make these amazing apple pies, and my daughter and I had been watching them on Instagram, and I thought I just have to get one of these apple pies, and it was only recently. So we bought this massive apple pie with 1 kilo of apples in it, with the most divine pastry that you've ever tasted, and I had my small piece with my bit of custard, and I didn't have it as a meal, and I didn't have it so I would eat a lot of it. I knew I was going to have it. And then the next morning I woke up and I continued my day like I would any other with my low carb real food.
Wonderful. And it's really interesting. So we have these 3 little phrases that we use for when people do things that are not on their plan. And one is a slip, which is the emotional eating, when you're not actually planning to eat something not on your plan, but something happens and your brain goes, oh, stuff it, and you'll hoe into something, and sometimes hoe into more than you expect to. But we also have a little phrase called the lapse, which is what you've just described, which is a planned event. And it might be something that is like this, a particular occasion, it might be an occasion, it might be a tasting of a certain food. But what you do is you also have your post-lapse plan, where you don't turn one meal or one eating occasion into a 6-week bender.
Exactly. And it's not to say that I haven't had those moments, but I think now when I slip on things like berries or nuts, cheese, which I find in the scheme of things better to slip on that than to slip on a cake or a block of chocolate. So those things, I think that you have to have those medium grounds where you go, okay, well, I'm going to have a few nuts today. I'm going to have a few more than a few nuts, and it's okay.
Absolutely. Because we all know you don't need to be perfect. We've spent, this is the problem with diet culture and diets. It's all about being perfect, and perfect is impossible. It's impossible to achieve. So it's about then making decisions for most of the time. And again, we're not always going to make perfect decisions. But if the majority of the time you do, that's what gives you your results.
Yeah, it's exactly like Dr. Mary says, progress, not perfection. And that sticks with me all the time, because as much as I've accomplished a lot doing this program, I've also failed a few times. And that's okay. I'm this all or nothing kind of person, and now I'm not an all or nothing kind of person, and that's just in itself an accomplishment.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, you're describing what we love to call the identity shift. So, and I remember early on, one of your identities, if I remember correctly, was I'm a terrible eater. And I remember you saying, my family are like me, we're terrible eaters. And it's like, okay, that's part of your identity. Whereas if you now look at your identity, what is it now?
I'm just me.
Yeah.
It's not, and it has nothing to do with the food. Like, food has always been a major hurdle, stumbling block, and a huge part of my life from when I was young to now. Like, when we were younger, like, I remember running to my grandparents' house. It was so good when we went to Nan and Granddad's. And the first thing we would do was we would go to the fridge or go to the cookie tin, because we knew what was there. Growing up in a house where there wasn't that available, you made your, like, any outing that we got to go to somebody else's house where they had great food was amazing. Like, that was a huge part of our life. And then growing into an adult and living by myself and being able to buy whatever I could buy myself, That's another big thing where I could just eat whatever I want whenever I wanted. And that's when I started to put on a lot of weight, and it didn't stop. And then when I became pregnant, it was, you can just eat for two now.
Yes.
But I didn't eat for two. I ate for four. So, I ate whatever I wanted whenever I could because it was available to me, and I didn't have to ask anyone's permission to do it. So, that huge, and then to carry that weight for the rest of my life and then add more to it as I kept going, it just didn't seem like I could find a solution out of it.
Yeah. So I think, again, you're describing something that we often talk about, which is this scarcity mindset where you feel like you've got to eat it now because it's never going to be available to you ever again, which comes often from childhood experiences or from diet experiences. And then when we get to that point where we're the boss of ourselves, we don't necessarily have the ability to self-regulate. So we just eat all the time because it's there.
And it's an addiction too. And with addiction, you have to just fight more than the cause of it. You have to fight the mental and the physical and the emotional and everything else that goes along with it. And I think that's what the best part of real life medicine is, and especially with the inner circle, is all the work that we do on ourselves.
Yeah. I think Jodes, your personal development, if you like, has just been phenomenal, and it's been absolutely a joy to watch. So for our listeners, what would you say have been the biggest wins for you?
Oh, lots of things. Just being able to say I can do it. And I know that we go through each month and we do different things each month. I've learnt how to fast. I've started journaling, which I never thought I would do. Like, holy moly, that's ridiculous. Being able to meditate or doing the hypnotherapy, unbelievable. That was something I was like, oh God, that's all nuts. Now I absolutely live for it. Just changing my mindset on what food is to me. A couple of weeks ago, I had a bit of a health scare and I had to go and have a biopsy and some tests done. And my daughter was driving me home and she said, oh, look, we can stop for a treat. There's Hungry Jack's there. And I said, well, no, food is fuel. It's not a treat. And that actually came out of my mouth. And that's what is so funny, is that those things don't come out of my mouth anymore. And so just my health benefits in being able to physically move. When we did the exercise, the strength timber, I fully invested into doing it. And then I had my health scare and I stopped. But I know that I can go for a walk and I can walk 5 kilometres and it's great and I feel good. And that's something that I had previously done, and I'd played sport and I'd exercised, and then I stopped because it was just too hard. But now nothing's too hard, and sometimes I even find myself like lightly jogging, and I think that's funny, but I still do it. But the health benefits as well, not having fatty liver, well, it's getting better. It's not exactly healed itself, but it's getting better. And every time I have blood tests, the number's lower, and that's the main thing. No longer being pre-diabetic. I don't think I touched on, I had really severe irritable bowel, which I don't have anymore, which, when I used to eat and think, oh my God, what have I eaten? I'm going to have to go to the toilet in like 2 minutes, and where's there a toilet? I don't have to do that anymore.
No. And what about the stairs?
The stairs, I can go up both flights of stairs, from the bottom to the top and then back down and then go back up again. So that's the best thing.
Absolutely. Well, Jodes, congratulations. I just think that the way in which you have turned around everything, like your thoughts, even your feelings towards things and your actions, and you've got your results. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And
I think for everybody, just embrace it all. Do what you can. You don't have to do everything at once. but do it in your own time and just keep trying.
Absolutely. Lovely listeners, hasn't this been delightful? Jodie, thank you so much. And next week, I will be back with Dr. Mary. So from both Jodie and I, have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon. Bye, darlings. So, my lovely listeners, that ends this episode of Real Health and Weight Loss. I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
And I'm Dr. Mary Barson. We're from Real Life Medicine. To contact us, please visit rlmedicine.com.
And until next time, thanks for listening.